Welcome to the IoT Leaders podcast. With me, your host, Nick Earle, the CEO of Eseye. And for those of you who are new to this podcast, this is about giving you insight, information, best practices, learnings about how to deploy a successful IoT project. And in each episode, I interview one of the leaders in IoT. And in this episode, I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Miroslaw Ryba, who runs Global IoT for EY. And Miro, welcome very much and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for the invitation. Glad to be here.
Great. Now, I know you've got quite some experience, so maybe just for our listeners, maybe you can just give me an overview of your role at EY and how long you've been involved in IoT.
Yeah, sure. So actually, this might be a bit shocking for some people because EY is mostly associated with financial advisory, financial services, tax, or transactions. But actually, at EY, we are working, and I'm working with IoT for over 12 years. And we started 2008. It was long before this topic became such a hype as it is right now. And we're thinking first about purely security, how to secure the whole IoT ecosystems, how to build what's kind of the next step in our thinking. And we started a small team. Now we reached the size of over 3,000 people around the globe, which are IoT experts in this domain. And my role here is actually to lead this practice and make sure that this 3,000 will turn to 6,000 a couple of years from now.
Okay, well, we need to unpack that. There's a lot in there. I'm gonna start off with actually the date part of it. And you're right. I mean, and we talked about this on previous podcasts, is that you said 2008. And of course, in 2008, as our listeners will know, it wasn't even called IoT. It was called M2M, machine to machine, or SCADA, factory floor. We were connecting machines. And then around 2011, we started saying, oh, it's going to be IoT, and the famous prediction there'll be 50 billion things connected by 2020. And here we are, just at the beginning of 2021, we're at 11 billion. So, we missed hugely. And maybe we can start off there in terms of what happened. And, from my perspective, it'd be interesting in your view, and you have a very global view. It seemed like the first wave was classic Geoffrey Moore, pre-chasm, innovators, early adopters, products that were, oh, isn't that cool? I can connect my toothbrush.
There's something in my local garage. This
and look at this. Look what I can make it do with a button. And it's like, yeah, but why do you want that? I don't know. It's just cool. So, for the big companies, and EY is a huge multi-billion-dollar company, and you work with multi-billion-dollar clients. Where are the true business outcomes? I mean, where's the money for these clients? Is it just smart enabling products, or is it much more fundamental to do with their business processes?
As you said, it started in the garages, and this whole mindset of building IoT was first driven by a group of passionate people who were trying to change something. They saw this new opportunity on the market, and technology was catching up, and suddenly we realized that technically speaking, you can do almost everything. Originally this industrial IoT or machine to machine, as you said, in 2008, 2010 was kind of a playground for trying to change something, to introduce new technology, new solutions to the existing ecosystems. And that was the first wave. The first wave was to put in whatever you can to your ecosystem, to your whole technical landscape, and see how this can improve the business, how you can get additional value, additional enablement thanks to the emerging tech, IoT connectivity. And this was kind of the first wave. Then the big challenges started. The whole question mark. Okay, I have so homogeneous environment. So how am I able to protect it? How to make sure that this environment is reliable? So these basic questions led various companies to actually start asking questions. Okay, so what next? I can do technically everything. I can create or launch the market whatever solution I want, but the fundamental question is, okay, how am I going to maintain it? How am I going to protect it? And how am I going to eventually make money on this whole investment that clearly is associated with IoT projects or IoT initiatives?
It's interesting the way you phrase that, because it's a little bit like saying, that people started off with the what, and even the how, because they went straight into the technologies, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But a lot of people forgot to ask the question why. I mean, why would it benefit me if I could connect?
Because I can.
Yeah, because I can, because it's cool. Look at this. The engineers. It was driven by the engineers. And starting off, it's like Simon Sinek. He says, start off with the why. Why are you doing this? What value does it give to customers? So, with 3,000 consultants working with clients, what are the business benefits? If you're in front of a senior directors, CXO level in a large company, what are the business benefits, in terms of business processes, back-end business processes? Because we talk a lot about digitization. What types of business processes can truly be transformed as opposed to just doing cool things by connecting products?
See, that's entirely true. That now this question why starting slowly starting to emerge, and this IoT journey actually is changing from the level of engineers to the level of the C-suite. And at the level of the C-suite, the only question is, how am I going to make money on it? So why am I going to am I supposed to invest in the digitalization?
Yeah.
And the digitalization is actually today, everything is digitalized, and especially now with all the lockdowns and the people not able to work permanently in different locations, there's more and more investments or the need to actually make sure that we are digitalizing all the processes which originally were actually assumed that they have to be made in person, manually on sites. And now we are talking with different heavy industry clients how to make sure that some of the work in the field shop floor can be done remotely, how to apply emerging tech, HoloLens or augmented reality to enable the operators provide or operate the equipment, the machines. So there is lots of the use cases, but when we are talking to the decision makers, what are the use cases, what are the business cases, and what the value they can drive, it's always the fundamental question which eventually comes up is, what are your main pain points? What is the way you want to optimize? So this is the first dimension. But there's a second dimension of digitalization, bringing IoT to the big corporations. It's actually the whole aspect of disruption, because you can optimize the existing environment, the existing processes, but this just gives you some little efficiency improvement.
It's an incremental benefit. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. The key thing and the key opportunity for various clients actually looking for this disruption. And there was a study that we did quite recently, and it shows that roughly 50% of CEOs believe that their company did enough in terms of disruption of their business. So there is still huge untapped business opportunity to disrupt the existing forms of doing business, and that's exactly what we are trying to work with our clients, to look for these areas where we can disturb their current business processes, the way they think about the revenue streams, and then when we are at the stage of finding these areas of disruption, we finally start bringing technology. So for us, the whole topic of IoT totally changed from the technical aspect to the business-driven, technology-enabled solution.
Yeah.
This is how we think about IoT today.
And I think that's a really good point. And I know, here at Eseye, we've got 2,000, we're pure IoT play, and we have 2,000 customers, but it is very, very common people to start off with saying, hey, I want to connect a device. I believe you do connectivity, global connectivity, you want to connect a device. It's like, and we have to train our business dev, pre-sales and salespeople to say, well, can you tell me about your business case? And in 70, 80% of the time, the person who's asking us the question doesn't know. And I think your point is start with the disruption first, then look at what the business benefit could be, either cost saving or competitive, new business model, innovation, and then eventually land on the technology. And it's the opposite way round to where a lot of the, if not all of the projects have been so far. I was thinking as you were speaking, it's very analogous to the first wave of the internet itself is that we started talking about HTML and web browsers and, cool stuff. But ultimately, the companies that really succeeded were the people who disrupted business models. I mean, the obvious example, Netflix today, completely disrupting Amazon, disrupting Uber, disrupting transportation, Airbnb, disrupting hotel business, where people just say, I could actually create a brand new model. So you're operating by looking at the disruption. So let's assume that you have a client.
Not only the disruption, but the disruption need to be followed by the whole value created around the product. And just give you the example. Now we are talking about whenever you turn on TV, there is news about COVID. The whole world is talking about COVID and the vaccination, right? But look what's happening with the vaccine. You have a vaccine, but you have a product. But technically, when I was thinking about it, you could build the whole ecosystem around the product itself, where with this incremental cost of maybe €1, because the current price of the Pfizer is 15 pounds, 20 euros per vaccine.
20 euros, yeah.
Yeah. So when you for Moderna it's a bit more, for AstraZeneca it's way less. So for one of these companies, and the competition is growing. There is more and more products that are in the clinical stage.
Yeah.
But for one of the products, it's they are very competitive. They are vaccine to the disease. But when you could apply this additional layer of the service around the vaccine, you could provide the blockchain traceability of the containers to make sure that the temperature was properly,
or optimize the supply chain for the delivery.
Exactly. And then you have when you're vaccinated, you can check on a blockchain side, if this vaccine dose you are getting is really actually the whole chain was properly
an adverse reaction and work backwards to the batch.
Exactly.
And then it would not be about a great example. It would not be about the vaccine, because they're all about 93, 94%. It would actually be about the business, the logistics, the supply chain, the traceability, and the data would determine who the winners are.
Exactly. And then you could go one step further. This you would know exactly what vaccine you took, and you are assured that this vaccine was properly transported, so it's fully effective. And then you can associate this tag with your personal ID or your social insurance ID, and you have the whole ecosystem built around the product. And now we are not talking about, you're not asking yourself, okay, am I going to choose Moderna or Pfizer or AstraZeneca or any other? I'm choosing the one which gives me the whole benefit, where I am, immersed by the whole ecosystem around the vaccine. And this gives the company which launches this additional service, huge competitive advantage on the market. And for me as a user, I have a choice, and here I have additional benefit, which let's be honest, when you're talking about the vaccine, which I would take eventually. So now I have to choose which one I want, and the price is not the issue here. So there is a room to actually implement this additional ecosystem around the vaccine itself.
Yeah, it's interesting, this issue. It comes back to the question I was going to ask you, which is about the data and the power of vast new amounts of data. The IoT, the connectivity part of IoT, is turning products into experiences, but is creating vast new amounts of data, and that data can be used in completely different ways. I mean, I was reminded there we're working with a very large pallet company. Let me say that, who they sell physical products, they sell pallets. But they want to turn themselves into an information company selling information to their clients as to where their clients' assets are, because their clients' assets, machine parts, car parts, are sitting on top of pallets. So rather than sell them the pallet, embed the tracker inside the pallet, and then tell the clients the granularity of supply chain data that you're referring to in that supply chain part of that example. They actually have more information than their clients because they always know where the pallet is. So they then would sell the information. And so the data becomes more valuable than the physical product. But they started by saying, what is the disruption that we could apply? And the disruption would be to transform ourselves into an information company as opposed to a pallet company. And so I think the big companies are now moving in to this sort of area. So let's talk about the data. The vast amounts of data are now being used. What are the best practices that you see in terms of people using data? Perhaps you have some examples of where people are using data in innovative ways in your clients to actually optimize these supply chains or manufacturing or warranty processes or these back-end processes that you're talking about, as opposed to enabling product. Any examples you can share with us?
Yeah, and of course, and actually, what you said is actually crucial. That this data is driving the whole ecosystem, and with the easiness of implementing additional sensors to get additional data, to get the more comprehensive view, the data is not the issue anymore. The only issue is your imagination, how you can use this data to build the use case and services. And this is what you mentioned, that your pallet company is trying to be data-driven, data operator, data company, not a pallet company. That's kind of a more and more common pattern on the market. But we can still remember that at the end of the day, they are transmitting the pallets.
Yes, still a physical product.
So the core business needs to stay. And we had this fantastic project, super challenging for Otis elevators. And when you realize the scale of this company, they operate 2 million lifts around the globe. And they every day they provide 2 billion unique user rides. So statistically speaking, every person in the world is in the Otis elevators twice a week. Statistically, of course, because some of them are never in their lifetime in the Otis elevator. Some of them traveling like hundreds a day, but they offer 2 billion unique rides per day. And there's a huge network of lifts. So now the question was, okay, how can they leverage this huge potential, right? They provide the service, which is the lift ride, and they know everything about their lifts. They know where they are. They know what conditions they are. So what additional extra value they can get out of it? So we created for them kind of a study where we identified with them over 100 different use cases, how they can generate additional value based on the data from their lifts. And
100 different examples of how they could make something, use the data. Is that what you said? 100 different examples.
Yeah, and for example, one of the cases was that based on this reach they had, they could actually monitor the condition of the buildings where the lifts are operating, And this additional revenues, this could be additional revenue stream for them. You know, they have infrastructure from the basement to the roof. So technically speaking, adding some connectivity features, they could become the 5G provider in the areas where they are, and they're already there, right?
Buildings, facilities management. We were talking to a lift company for our Americans friends, an elevator company, and they were saying about China. I don't know whether you've heard this example in China, and this was well, I was going to say pre-COVID, but they're powering on, so they're probably still doing it. In China, where you have like a luxury restaurant on, say, the 80th floor, the idea of the walls of the lift become digital advertising spaces, because it takes you 2 minutes or whatever to get to the top, minute or something to get to the top, and that you're a captive market. And if they know you're going to the luxury restaurant, they know that you're a high net worth. And the idea is almost like if you can identify yourself with the phone in some way, or they can pick up through your phone, you may want to get loyalty points or access, check into the restaurant on the way up, but they know who you are now. And then they can start targeting advertising to you. So actually, to your point about an elevator might be not just a means of transporting people up and down, it might be a way of doing facilities management. In their mind, they were saying an elevator is actually a personalized advertising capsule, which is going to show you the menus, but also perhaps there's a range of luxury goods they're going to advertise to you.
Exactly.
So it's this explosion of data. And I like the phrase you said, you're only limited now by your imagination. And so I think the theme that we're both saying here is don't start with the technology. It's sort of a hard thing for tech companies. Don't start with technology. Start with think big, think the art of the possible. Yes. Start off with the disruption, look at the business case. How could you enable the business case? And then you suddenly realize with all these sensors, actually, you probably can enable the business case. So it starts with a sort of an Imagineering type process. I want to, the issue of China, I want to move on, Miro, if I can. The issue of China, and of course, there are different privacy. I'm sure some of our listeners say, oh, yeah, but, you know, identifying yourself to the elevator. In China, they let you do that because there's different privacy regulations. And that brings and that's true.
But the privacy is changing, you know, look, you know, how eager we are right now to give up our privacy.
Yeah, we're desperate to share.
Different companies or, you know, in some countries, you have to give up your privacy just to be able to enter to the restaurant because your app.
That's true with COVID. With COVID, we've all
exactly.
Yeah. So when you have to, you will give it up. Will the regulator? It's tough for the regulators, isn't it? Because in two ways. One is the privacy of the data issue, but also I've heard some people talk about, you know, as we have this explosion of devices, we're actually, and we talked in a previous podcast about devices that go on parcels you talk about the COVID vaccines, you know, tracking, real-time track and trace, pallets, parcels, frozen food, chilled food. We're creating things which are almost like disposable devices, especially if it's on a box of frozen crab legs or whatever. And so, we are actually exposing more data, and we are actually creating more things. So from a green perspective and a privacy perspective, there are going to have to be new regulations around this area. Does this ever come up in any of your discussions as to what role the regulator may play on either of those issues?
Yes, maybe not on this environmental aspect, but we are talking with different regulations on different ways how to adapt IoT to to better estimation of the value of the assets, for example, or how to use this data for a more accurate or precise taxation or amortization calculations. So yes, we are seeing this around the globe that there is more and more touch points with the regulatory bodies who are looking for the ways how to make sure that they are catching up with this new trend, and they are adjusting the regulations, they're adjusting the law to be able actually to accommodate this changes which are driven by the digital.
Can I stop, Miro? Because the reason we can go back and cut and splice. The reason I asked you that question is that you said to me on the previous call about the concept of sugar tax.
Yes.
And I thought it was a cool idea. And so when I threw you that, I was sort of saying, do you want to bring that cool idea up again? And then you look like
I was going to actually reach this point, because that's exactly what
should I ask you the question again? Should I so they can go back and ask I'll ask you that question that I started, and then they'll splice and they'll do it again, because I don't know whether I asked the question right, is what I'm saying. So let me ask that question again, and we'll start that again. Okay, so that was my mistake. Sorry. So when you talk about China and people say, oh well, they have different privacy laws in China, and people will give up their data voluntarily. But as you say, people are giving it up voluntarily all the time, and with COVID, that's accelerating, which raises the issue of the regulator and what role the regulator will play on a variety of issues. It seems like the regulator has a tough time. They're playing catch up all the time. I mean, this thing is moving so quick, and yet it has to be regulated. So what is your experience and your belief as to what role the regulator may play in the future in this explosion of IoT?
Actually, what we see around the globe, that regulators are trying to, as I said, catch up with these new trends and new changes in the markets, and definitely the regulators are seeing the need of introducing some new ways of dealing with all the aspects of privacy of the data, and whenever you go anywhere, your data is transmitted with you. So your location is obvious, your preferences are shared. So the regulators are aware of it, and more and more people are willing nowadays to give up their privacy for some benefits, and you can see it all the way around. And another thing is when you are talking about the regulators, they are clearly finding their role in this new ecosystem, and one of the things which is important here from the whole society perspective is eco-friendliness. And you mentioned about this sensors. There's more and more devices, so there's always a question mark. What to do with all these devices which are broken or not in use anymore.
We're creating a problem. Yeah.
There's a huge problem, and from environmental friendliness, that's a huge playground for the regulator to make sure that they enter this scene, and from the environmental perspective, they introduce some regulations to actually help or enforce this proper ways of dealing with the digital waste. And you can take a look at what's happening in different countries, different geographies. They're introducing this sugar tax, just to force or enable people to reduce the consumption of sugar. So there's an economical factor, there's an economical way to force you to think, am I going to buy a product with a sugar? So I will have diabetes, I will impact the healthcare system, and okay, it's tasty, but it's super expensive. So maybe I'll buy a cheaper product with more healthier sweetener, right? So the same concept could be adapted to the IoT space, and that would be kind of an additional factor for the companies. Am I going to use the cheap, bad quality sensor or the digital device, which is taxed additionally with this kind of digital IoT sugar tax? Or am I going to use this self-disposing IoT sensors, which are much more eco-friendly, but they are much more expensive in terms of production. So this difference in the cost of the production of the ecologically friendly sensor versus the regular one would be balanced by this additional tax, and it would be good for everyone, for the budgets of countries, especially with all the stimulus that all the world is printing money nowadays. Plus, it will have a great impact on our planet.
And talking about printing, people listening thinking, how on earth can you have an environmentally friendly device in action? And we're probably going to make this a subject of a future podcast, but we're now seeing IoT devices being printed. I mean, literally, they are. You print the circuit, you print the battery, you print the sensors.
You print
It's
everything
a fascinating area. And then the idea is, if you can print it, can you actually make it recyclable? And can you make the other components compostable? So it's a whole new area which we're on at the moment. So let's let's finish then by talking about some innovative case studies that we've each seen here at Eseye. We're 14 years old as a company. We've got tons of case studies. I always try and introduce one cool case study per podcast. But let me start with you. Are there any examples of companies that you've worked with that you think are doing it well, that didn't start with the data, that started with the disruption perhaps, that have managed to get through the working out how to use the data and are actually now in market with some innovative IoT solutions that you think are making a difference out there?
Yeah, I'm just thinking which case to choose. But we work with various clients who are trying to disturb or disrupt their way of doing business. But the case which I believe is super powerful, and it can be also found in public places, is Royal Caribbean. We're working with Royal Caribbean for a couple of years now, and this client actually changed completely the whole way of providing the service on the cruise. So before they disrupted this cruise business, they knew everything about you before you shipped the ship. But after you boarded, there were different problems of connectivity on the ship. Yep. Because it's a kind of big Faraday box, so there's always the issue of connectivity. So we're working with them. We actually disrupted all the way how the user journey starts from the moment you come up with the idea, I will go for a cruise, to the moment when you board the ship, and then you have all the digital enablement during the whole journey on the really cruise. And then when you disembark the ship. So that was a great journey that we went together with Royal Caribbean, where we built these use cases and we implemented this together with them. So now, from the perspective of the Royal Caribbean, they are able to adopt or adjust the offer to the unique personal needs of each of the passengers on the cruise. And from the personal perspective of person who is buying this cruise, you have all this digital sphere, digital ecosystem, where you can act and find yourself and choose what services, what features you want to buy, just to make sure that all your cruise is remarkable.
And all of which they sort of close the loop, don't they? Because then all of which means that after you've had this fantastic experience, which is everything was connected and you were able to access all these services while you were there. And then when you finish the cruise, you have this great feeling that, oh boy, it was just such a great experience. So you then start dreaming about your next cruise. And so, so IoT is actually, IoT, in a sense, IoT is almost becoming more important than the ship and the facilities, because your experience is determined by the services that are presented to you and customized.
The ship is the carrier. The IoT sensors and connectivity is actually the blood in the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, that the product's becoming experiences. Maybe I'll finish with one of our. It's not as good as Royal Caribbean, but I think it's a very innovative case study, and one that many people will use every day. And that's the Costa Express. Costa, now bought by Coca-Cola. Previously, strategy is to have coffee shops all over the place, and they still do. But they then went into vending machines. A customer of ours, but people might not know there's 90 sensors inside a Costa coffee machine. 90. Can you think of that? I mean, it is quite amazing what's inside them, and what we help them, working with their partner to help them design the machine and aggregate the data from the sensors and backhaul it into the center. But one of the things that they do is the coffee machines are now big digital displays. And to your point, like it's like the cruise ship is just the vehicle, the coffee, the machine dispenses coffee, but actually it's a digital display advertising unit. And it can, what it can do is obviously give you lots of choices. It's 1 square meter. It's not on a Costa premise. It's in somebody else's premise. It's a single product SKU that they roll out in every country with global ubiquitous connectivity. But one of the things they're now doing is you can get your loyalty points by scanning the QR code with your phone. Now, the point about opting into privacy is that you are saying, yes, I want my loyalty points, but they know who you are. So now you're building up this incredible data of everyone's coffee drinking profile on a unit of one, what they drink, where they get it, which choices they pressed on the screen, and how often they drink it. And you think of the power of that data and the ability in the future to personalize the machine.
Then you can build a whole ecosystem around it.
Yeah.
Additional services, additional features, additional third parties to sell you stuff, which is going well with preferences.
Yeah, the whole vending is that then you could actually have relevant advertising. And then when 5G comes along, because you can do augmented reality, think of Pokemon. This is not Costa, this is some other machines, other companies, but think of Pokemon where you point your phone and you can see characters on the street. Well, then with 5G, you put your phone in front of the vending machine and you get a bill of materials, virtual bill of materials, which shows you the supply chain. Is it fair trade? The fair trade ingredients, so how many calories, where was it manufactured? And people are wanting to understand that information before they buy products. So the whole area of retail is going to be much more about the information than the product itself. Exactly. And so it's very, very interesting. Listen, we could talk all day, and we need to finish off. I want to finish off by asking you one last question. It goes back to the very first thing that you said, which I'm still thinking about. Wow. I mean, you're running a global organization, you're expecting it to double over a period of time. So this is a very, very hot area. So there's lots of interesting people in this area doing interesting things. And that's what we try and do for this podcast. So is there one company or one person that you would recommend that our listeners would benefit from if they were to appear on a future IoT Leaders podcast?
Actually, the biggest challenge is to say one. You say one. So there's a challenge.
Only got time for one.
because this world is full of great inventors and and companies and ideas. I know that you are in touch with all the big players, so from Microsoft.
Yes, that's right.
So I'm not going to look for this in this direction. I believe that something what I believe that we could reach out to maybe Jean-Pierre Tirole. He can share with you great war stories from the project they did. It's transition technologies.
Which technologies? Sorry, Miro.
The transition technologies.
Okay.
They operate worldwide and they work with Microsoft and PTC. So he can share with you the war stories and great cases they implemented either as a transition technologies or PTC together with PTC. So I believe that this could be the great idea to invite him to share with the audience.
I will tell him that you recommended him, and you mentioned Microsoft, and Tony Shakib, who runs IoT globally for Microsoft, is actually going to be a future guest. So that episode will be recorded shortly. So we will have the head of IoT for Microsoft on a future IoT Leaders podcast. But let's leave it there. It's fascinating. I think being only limited by your imagination, starting off with the disruption, working from that way, and then getting to the technology is the big learning. It is so hard to do. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it. But I think that is a really, really valuable piece of advice to our listeners. So I just want to wrap up here. Thank everybody, as always, for listening to the IoT Leaders podcast. We have a large list of people who are wanting to come on the show and share their experiences. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you to my guest, Miro, who I know has recently, in the last couple of months, been promoted to the worldwide level. So congratulations, Miro, on your promotion. You got a very big job with a lot of very big clients, and there's a lot of innovation going on and a lot of disruption. So thank you for sharing some of your insights. And we look forward to talking to all of our listeners again in the next version of the IoT Leaders podcast. So thanks, Miro.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for this great discussion.
Yes, great. And we'll leave it there. Thanks very much. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.